Hey, welcome back to McChats here on McGTV, youtube.com/MikeMcGTV. It definitely has been a long time since I've done one of these. For those newer to my site, I have a bunch of podcasts, one of which we just got done with a new episode, Remake Revolution, that I share ownership with 3 Geeks and PVDCast on. Another one, To the Chat Cave, where I have Max from 3 Geeks on talking about Batman stuff. And then there's this one, McChats, where I just talk about random things with random guests, or not random guests, but people I enjoy talking to. It's a very miscellaneous whatever. And so welcome to the latest episode here where I have John Orlando from the PVDCast.
Hello, everybody. I hope everyone out there is doing well and they're staying safe and sound and healthy and, just trying to continue on through this absolutely god-awful year of 2020.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So this will be partly like a couple of topics and part therapy session for those listening, probably. It all ties together. Recently, John played Judge on the latest Remake Revolution, which you should go check out at youtube.com/MikeMcGTV. Also on 3geeks.ninja. They have the audio version of that, or should have the audio up soon. And also, are you hosting that on PVD as well?
I will be hosting it in a few weeks. Yes.
Okay.
I felt like consciously, like I want you guys to go ahead and get it out there. And then because I have some people already that I've promised schedules to.
Yeah, you have a
so
schedule.
I'm like, yeah, I mean, so it'll be there eventually. And it was a fun one, and I can't believe it's the 11th one.
Yeah.
I kind of took a step back when I saw that in the title. I was like, 11? Doesn't seem like that.
Bear in mind too, I've had this idea going since like 2016, so it's not that big of an achievement. I've cranked out 11 episodes over 4 years, so or something along those lines. But when we do get them together, especially when you have like a huge group of people kind of on the cast, I like that energy, especially either when we're doing it live or when we're just being able to wrangle in a lot of cool guests.
Yeah, and I think that this one is really, really good because of the opponents for Team 3 Geeks. Victor Dandridge, who is the man behind Vantage In-House Productions and all the various different comic books that fall under that umbrella, such as The Samaritan, The Trouble with Love, The Kinderguardians, et cetera, et cetera. He's got such a great personality, and he was teaming with Ryan, the co-creator of, the co-owner of Comic Town, which is up here in Columbus, right off of State Route 23 and Dilmont Avenue. And those two guys do a great job with their YouTube show, Black, White, and Red All Over. So to have them on, I kind of knew we were in for something special, to be honest.
Yeah. And so I look forward to future episodes with you in whatever capacity, whether you're going to be judge, whether you're going to take over hosting, or whether you're going to contribute some ideas and be a contestant again.
I look forward to it.
Yep. You need to take back that belt. So
should we explain that maybe to new people what we're talking about with that?
There's a Remake Revolution sort of championship belt that's been hopefully it'll get in more circulation, but you need to up your game in order to get it back, I guess.
You know what? I wouldn't mind seeing it hanging in Comic Town.
There you go.
I'm not gonna lie, I would like to see that.
That'd be kind of cool, yeah.
Yeah, it would be like Flat Stanley, going all around Columbus.
Yes. I do remember that. So we'll see what the future holds for Remake Revolution. But what are you doing recently then? Because we mentioned, you'll have that hosting in a couple of weeks, but you have a schedule of guests. Like, who are you going to have on PVDcast soon?
Well, this week's episode, I sit down with Joe Urban. He is the owner and the label manager for an independent record label out of Massachusetts called Take This to Heart Records. Joe was the contact person for my episode with the band Snarls, which is a Columbus-based band that I really dig their sound. And so I invited him. I said, man, come on, let's talk about because I like music. I don't in fact, Snarls is the first musical guest I ever had because believe it or not, and we talked about this Mike off air, sometimes you invite people and they don't want to come on, or they blow you off, for lack of a better term, or you never hear from them. So yeah, I've sent out, and I won't name names, but I've sent out a lot of emails and invites to many local Columbus musicians and bands, and just I never hear from them. And so nonetheless, I offered Joe the opportunity to come on, and I jokingly, in a pun, say it takes you behind the music, but I learned a lot of stuff to, how that label kind of works and their philosophy, and how things go on behind the scenes of making a record. So it's a great episode. It's episode number 240, which I can't believe, like 240 episodes. I'm like,
Congrats,
it
man.
blows my mind. Thank you.
Milestone.
Yeah, it blows my mind. I think 7 years ago I didn't think I'd ever get to episode 2, let alone 240.
There you go. Yeah.
So
it's like the longevity surprises you with.
Oh, it does. It does. I'm sure you're the same way.
Well, it depends too, because like I'll drop in and out of my different projects here and there. So while it's good to have 11 episodes of Remake Revolution, keep in mind, that's not as big an achievement to get to that number, because that's been in longer development or longer kind of production. But yeah, when I hit a certain milestone, there is a nice little look back and being like, you've come somewhat far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look, I think up until, I don't know, maybe a couple, when it was actually last summer, I kind of stopped really worrying about numbers. I mean, because in this game, you can get conflicting data like you wouldn't believe. Like, this episode's up, X amount of listens, but the next one's down, and you added 15 followers on whatever social media, but the other one dropped 20, and that you've had these impressions, that impressions, and it just kind of, I think for me, it was last September when all my numbers just through Libsyn went through the floor, and I was like, what the hell? And then, and I'm sure they won't mind, I talked to the guys from Canned Air, and they're like, John, same thing. It happened to everybody. And it made me feel so good, because I was really disheartened, like, oh my God, all of this work that I've been putting in, and we were climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. And now, and I think it was right after that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop worrying about it. Whatever happens, happens.
I think the important thing is just so long as like you feel good about the quality you're putting into the work. Yeah. And it's less about, like you said, the numbers or how much like audience retention is a great thing, obviously, but if you feel proud of the product that you put out there, then I feel that has to account more for something than anything else. And absolutely, like, I feel that's why I've always wanted to get you on this particular podcast, where we don't necessarily have to shackle ourselves down to talking about geek things or remaking stuff. I love doing that with you, don't get me wrong, but just to kind of just shoot the breeze about maybe even the art or the profession or the methodology of podcasting, and just being able to share other people's stories through this medium is really fascinating to me. Like, I'm just curious, you're a great interviewer.
Thank you.
I think this past like 3 Geeks, we were talking with David J. Fielding, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, who is the voice and the
likeness.
first, physical likeness face-wise for Zordon on the Power Rangers. And I don't know about you, but I know zilch really about Power Rangers.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I was not a Power Rangers fan.
Yeah, but Max and Jason on 3 Geeks, were big Rangers fans. And so they were able to like field more of kind of the fan questions as if he was, at a convention and so forth and meeting with fans. And then to have like us come in and do like outsider kind of like inquiries, like I'm trying to remember exactly what we asked him, but I felt it was like a little bit outside the norm of, well, what was it like to reach this in Power Rangers or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that number one is I like to be prepared, and I know that becomes a joke in certain circles. I mean, and that's fine, but I like to be prepared. I like to have some bullet points to kind of guide things along. I don't like to go willy-nilly and just harem scarum, helter skelter. As a matter of fact, I Mike
Sorry.
loves all my. You like all my old timey.
Oh, we'll get to that. I have
my old timey sayings from my grandmother, huh?
Yeah, no, you have a proverb book just at your disposal right there that I'm not seeing. It's just like,
I'm known for preparation and proverbs. That's what
yes.
I'm known for.
You don't go in for all that skullduggery or all those shenanigans. Anyways,
I don't want to be. Yeah. I just feel like you have to kind of, like today, I sat down with 2 comic creators from England, and I told them, I said, look, I like to have a conversation. I have some bullet points, but that's just to guide things. And a lot of times, when one of my guests answer a question, I'm like, oh, wait, what about, it's not even on the bullet points, but I can quickly go, well, what about this? And they actually gave me a compliment, because as soon as I offered them the opportunity to come on, they kind of did a little research as well. It was like, well, let's start listening to this dude's podcast. Let's see what it sounds like. Let's know a little bit about him. And so that was awesome. That was awesome for them to give me compliments on that. And, but yeah, I think just when I sit down to prepare, I just try to take some notes. And I think everybody has, the similar questions, like when you're sitting down with an actor or an actress, how'd you get into acting? I think that everybody asks that, but I kind of try to sometimes find other things, that might connect. And I, like a prime example was when we sat down with Kevin Sorbo. Like for me, doing the background, and he was from Minnesota, from Mound, Minnesota, the home of the Ganyas, who ran AWA Wrestling. For me, that was just, I have to ask. And I honestly, Mike, to be honest, thought that he'd probably look at me and go, what? But the mere fact that he worked on Vern's boat and like, boom,
Yeah.
like, I mean, so I think when you start interviewing, you just look for the facts, and then other ideas that pop in your head, you kind of go with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you never know like what boons or gifts will be given to you due to your extra effort to kind of dig a little bit deeper, or to find, something a little bit more kind of, I guess, resonating or relatable to them outside of maybe the 3 or 4 questions, like you said, they will always get in interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think a lot of that, stems from being able to do it intimately on this type of setup where it's just you and them, as opposed to say like when you're at a convention with some actors or some, icons of pop culture, and you're either fielding questions for them while they're at their booth, or you're, asking a question of them in like a Q&A, where really the design of like a Q&A is to kind of keep it pretty light. So that way it just keeps moving and you can get more fan interaction from other people. So it's not necessarily just about your questions or your desire to hear stories. I kind of learned that not the hard way, but an interesting way. Because I know we had that one Wizard World. I can't remember if it was the last one I was actually at or not. But Max and I think Dan and a couple of us, Jason might have been there, went to the Firefly Q&A. And it was Sean Mayer and Jewel State. And it was just, asking questions of them, kind of that, you know how it is. You've been to some of those Q&As where it's like open forum, the microphones are set up and you just walk up and ask.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, people have been kind of asking like questions with regards like, where do you think your character would be now, or so forth, and things like that. And then I get up there and I ask them about Ron Glass, Ron Glass, I think the year prior or 2 years prior had passed away.
Yes.
And I just knew that I knew that the crew and the cast were really tight. And so I just wanted to ask him, like, I acknowledge like he was a tremendous talent and so forth, but did you have any, memorable or funny kind of recollections of him on set or interactions with him? And that went on for like 20 minutes, like them recalling stories. And part of me is like, awesome. I love hearing these stories. I love seeing behind the curtain a little bit. And they're like getting like emotional talking about, but not like emotional, like, how dare you ask us this?
Right.
But
Yeah.
It's good that you brought this. It's a cathartic moment to be able to recognize their friend. But then I'm realizing like, oh man, this is not the right forum for it. Cause there's like, I feel bad for like the 8 other people who probably had a shit ton more questions, But it's all about like where you choose to ask those questions too, how you go about approaching them, if it's going to be in the form like that or if it's going to be kind of one-on-one what we're doing now, because we can work off of each other pretty naturally, as opposed to, all right, there's an audience full of people now and each of them want their chance at figuring something out.
And I think too, you have to kind of, sometimes when you ask that edgy question, you got to preface it a little bit.
Oh, I felt I did do that a little bit.
No, yeah. I totally, I agree. You certainly set it up, and actually, to be honest with you, I don't think you needed to set that question up, because it's just, hey, it's a statement about how great Ron was on the set as a person and as an actor, but I think that, here's an example. I was a little bit careful in how I worded a question that Jason and I just recorded another episode of Matt Talk with Lori Lethan, who is
you guys have been talking this interview up in the chats.
We have, but one of the things is that she was cast as Matlock's daughter in the pilot, and then she wasn't in episode 1. She was, a whole new actress. And so, I thought you gotta kind of ease into that question, don't just, because I don't know the story and I don't want her to go, well, you know what, screw you guys, and hang up, so it's kind of that. And I think that that's the other skill that you have to have when you interview people, is you gotta be able to kind of find a way to ask your questions. If it's a delicate one, do it the best way that you can, and just go with the flow. If they don't want to answer it, they don't answer it. She did, by the way, and I don't want to ruin it. She did explain thoroughly everything that happened with that casting call, so to speak. But yeah, and I think that's the other thing. Just just be careful, be cautious how you phrase things when you're talking about something like that.
I think that's like, I of course, I'm not going to speak on everyone's behalf who does this sort of like question and answer kind of segment on their podcast, but I think that's an aspiration for a lot of interviewers or online, commentators or journalists, is to be able to find that balance of being like, I'm going to challenge my subject with something, but at the same time, I'm going to be as diplomatic as I can be with that challenge. So I don't immediately put them on a defensive or make them feel uncomfortable. At the same time, I don't want to placate them so much that this is an interview perhaps, or a story that they could tell in their sleep. Like, you want to be able to maybe offer something new or different, because that'll hook in your listeners as well. It's like, these listeners, if they're coming to your show for that particular topic or that particular person, they've probably heard a lot of these anecdotes or a lot of these kind of facts about their favorites throughout many other shows or many other like press junkets. So to be able to kind of find that delicate balance, find a question or an avenue, if you will, to explore without treading too much on their personal boundaries about it. It's you got to be really skillful about that. I feel you sell that very well on a lot of your interviews, on a lot of your segments.
Thank you.
So you mentioned Matt Talk.
Here's where we talk about the fact that John is a 90-year-old Jewish man, and not a 45-year-old kid of the 80s. But anyways, go ahead.
Well, first off, where can we find Matt Talk again?
Matt Talk is on Anchor FM /Matt Talk. We have been posting the episode actually right through the Facebook page for Matt Talk, which is at Matt Talk Podcast on Facebook. So you really don't even have to go to Anchor. You can just click right there and listen for there. The funny part is this, if we're being 100% honest, this is kind of a goof, this idea. It was a goof. And up for a challenge that I sometimes am up for, I'm like, well, damn it, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Let's throw it up there and see what happens. And the funny part was I created that Facebook page on like a Thursday, and by like Thursday night, Friday morning, there were like 2 or 3 messages, right? When is this coming out? And I'm like, oh my. I have certainly, and again, not slandering anybody, they were older people, but they were very, very excited. These 3 folks, I'm like, within literally 24 hours, I've had 3 people talk to me about this podcast. So, and if it wasn't for COVID, I would take it to rest homes around the area, man, and do it. I would do it live. It's my way to, in all seriousness, my way to do something good for somebody. I would go I've told Jason that. I'm like, man, if it wasn't for COVID, like, because there's a retirement home like literally 2 minutes from my house. I'm like,
Yeah.
go over there every Wednesday night. We'll throw it on the TV. Everybody watch it together. You know.
So the regular format then is, are you guys going episode by episode, or obviously
Yes.
if you have like special guests, you'll accommodate? Okay.
Yes, we're going episode by episode.
Wow.
So we will have episode 1 here next week. We're going to record it. The interview with Lori will be up on Monday. So we're trying to release the 2nd and 4th Monday of every month. And just see where it goes. 6 months from now, it's still, with the number of listeners it's listening that we have now, maybe we pull the plug. I don't know. We're just kind of winging it,
Yeah.
So,
well, let's get to the root of it, which is, what is your fascination with older genre television? Let's say, like, let's put it this way: it's something of a miracle that you found a kindred spirit in Jason to have this particular podcast. But what is sort of your focus then? Because you mentioned Matt Talk. You mentioned you've only, and I know we kind of play it for jokes on the Three Geeks at times, but it seems like you've only just recently got into like the peak TV stuff, like Breaking Bad and so forth. But a lot of your references tend to harken back to an earlier time in television.
I think it's part nostalgia.
Okay.
And it's also part of, I am an old soul. I mean, that's the reality of it. Just my family makeup, my father, he was married for a very long time, got divorced. And then, so I have 2 half sisters and a half brother, but they're older than me. So I was, and then he met my mom, and my mom was 15 years younger than him. So he was 44. She was 29, 30, 29, so I kind of grew up like not really having, because my brother was 16 when I was born, so in a couple of years he was out of the house and on his own. And so, and I lived in a neighborhood where there were not a lot of kids my own age. Up the street, there were a couple of kids, but they were older. And my mom was like, I don't want you running around with 12 and 13-year-olds when you're 6, So I kind of just, I was always around aunts and uncles. And so part of that is like, I'm an old soul because I would go to my great aunt Skip's house, and she'd be watching Bob Ross. And I'm like, okay, and that's how I discovered it. And I watched it. So I think it's a combination of both those things. I am an old soul deep down. And it's also nostalgia. I mean, because we have so much content now that, you can watch whatever. If you get a hankering for Knight Rider, you can watch Knight Rider.
Yeah, it's all it's all being re-released, and everything's like now available for streaming.
Right.
I was about to ask too. It's like, what do you suppose? Because I'm noticing a lot of like resurgence in sort of retro reviews for shows and retro reviews for pop culture. Like, I know of a couple people who have done like Murder, She Wrote kind of follow-alongs. I know someone. I know a YouTuber who has a kind of a fixation, or at least likes to focus on Quantum Leap and things like that. And so, you feel it's tied in directly to the fact that a lot of these things are becoming more readily available for streaming, and that's why there is such a surge of interest in it? Or has it been there all along and we just haven't been as kind of aware of it, but thanks to social media?
Mike, that's a great question. I have no idea. I really don't. I don't know. I really haven't even noticed if there's a resurgence in this like nostalgic 80s TV boom. I don't know. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I don't really know. I can't answer that. I can just say that, for me, it is the nostalgia of it all. Mm-hmm. And as I said on the first episode of Matt Talk, I didn't really watch Matt Talk as a kid. Matlock. I didn't watch Matlock as a kid, but as an adult, because as I shared, my brother who lived in Eastern Ohio, they had cable for a while, then he got rid of it. He was one of the first people that I knew to cut the cord because, they lived out kind of in the country. and there was only one cable provider, and you paid what you paid, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't like paying $150 a month? Too damn bad. Who else is going to give you cable TV out in the sticks? And going home to visit, I remember I think it was Christmas time. He's got the antenna. So now Me TV, I don't have Me TV. What's on Me TV? And then I just started watching Matlock, that week that I was home. And then that's what kind of rekindled that, like, this is a really good show. I mean, it's delightful. It's a simpler time, and that's where it went off and running. And now, I cut the cord probably a year after he did. And so now I get all those, Charge TV and Comet TV and Me TV and all those other ones. So, that's kind of
a bulk of their content will be kind of that throwback to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I'm sure it's cheap and easy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The syndication rights for a lot of those older shows, I'm sure we could probably buy up a show for syndication if we wanted.
How about let's pick Manimal? Let's do that one.
I'm all for, yeah, sure. We'll do Manimal.
Do you remember The Master?
No.
It was an NBC show where, and I can't remember the actor that's in it because he's a well-known actor, but he was like the ninja master, and he taught his like apprentice. It didn't last very long, but I remember.
About to say, it's like, yeah, how long did it last?
In maybe a season, but I vaguely remember it. And it, because, come on, dude, 1982, ninjas, hello.
That was before my time. You're a little bit older than me. Yeah.
Just a tad bit.
Just a tad bit, but no, I mean, I would see a lot of shows like in syndication and in reruns. That's how I was introduced to stuff like Night Court. That's how I was introduced to actually Next Generation. That was a favorite for my dad and myself. After like Saturday night dinner, we would watch a couple of episodes of TNG, MASH, of course, Cheers. A lot of those programs ended up running in syndication on the local channels for several years of my childhood. I just find it really interesting that it's like a lot of the subject matter for these podcasts now, these retro podcasts, it is taking a little bit more of a focus on not adult as in like, oh, after dark adult content, but like more grown up type of shows. Like Matlock, clearly is designed for a more mature viewer with regards to its content, not necessarily like being graphic or explicit, but just because Matlock's not going to hold the attention probably of a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, like say Transformers would, or Star Wars or something. So it's like, it's I find that fascinating now that there's such a passion and interest in exploring nostalgic properties, but not necessarily childhood nostalgic properties, like properties we would typically associate with childhood. It's like that's cool, man. Like, all for it. I'm looking forward to listening to more from you guys.
Well, and look,
how many
Jason.
seasons ago?
Oh, it's 5 seasons.
5 seasons. Okay.
No. It's more than that. I think it's 6. But the last season was on ABC because NBC canceled it, and ABC picked it up. It was a Scrubs scenario, very much so. Yeah, but they recast a lot of people. Andy Griffith is still Matlock, but they recast the supporting cast, and it's not very good. It's kind of rough. So that'll be like the dark ages of the podcast for you. That's where we will make more fun of it than actually show as much respect as we did in previous episodes. Right. So, nice. Although I will say this, some of this 80s TV does not hold up well, as Jason loves to give me crap about some social media posts that I have released about Knight Rider and how absolutely god awful Knight Rider can be, because it's laughable, like just unbelievably bad. I mean, I feel Knight Rider is absolutely an example of a show in which your lead is carrying the show. Like, yes. If it wasn't David Hasselhoff, because they tried to bring back Knight Rider years ago, and it floundered terribly. And it's like, you need that particular personality or that particular actor with charisma, because he's going to get you through some rough crap. Yes. There were a couple that I literally could not stop laughing at how ridiculously hokey that episode was. Oh my gosh, it was bad.
See, I feel you might be of kindred spirits with Jason with regards to your love for Matlock and older genre TV. I feel we're kindred spirits in that we can kind of celebrate and appreciate just how off the rails things can get with certain products. Because for those not in the know, I do a podcast called One and Done where we talk about shows that only lasted one season. And that is a journey that started in like the late 90s with Kindred the Embraced.
Mm-hmm.
Our first show that we tackled was that one, and then we did like a pilot that never aired for Wonder Woman, and now we're into Firefly. But I have a feeling I've been just unearthing all these shows that only lasted one season that, you know, are available for free on YouTube, some of them, because that's the only way you can see them. But I'm just like, we have to watch this because you're either going to hate it or you're going to enjoy just how off the mark they can be. Or maybe there's some legit gems. Who knows?
There was one that was on Comet that I had to look up because I'm like, I have never heard, and it lasted one season. And I want to say it had a really god-awful title, like The Adventures of Zack Starr or something like that. Oh my God, it was terrible. It was awful. And you read the Wikipedia page, and it's like it lasted one season. And at the end of this first season, they retconned everything they did through the other. I'm like, who does that? Like, totally. I'm like, oh my God, I can't remember. I'll look it up off air. It was horrific. It was bad. It was very, very bad. And it was all about, it was basically like Mork, only a serious Mork. Like a kid from outer space landed. He's going to high school. He's got these secret powers. His dad is like the colonel general from Galaxis 9 or whatever the hell the planet was called, and it was horrible.
The Adventures of Zack Starr?
I think it was called that.
I'll take a look myself because that might be some fruit worth growing, let's say, ripening in our podcast.
Until I get an email from Mike going, God damn it, John, seriously?
Why?
You picked this TV show? It's called The Agony.
It'll just be one word response. It'll be all caps. Why? Period. Not even a question mark. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Man.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like you were saying earlier, we wouldn't have the opportunity to kind of have this look back and explore this stuff if it wasn't for the pandemic. Like,
yes.
Matt Talk wouldn't have come to fruition if it wasn't for the fact that we just need to find stuff to do. And
yeah, but I've been managing to get through, you know, and you mentioned it, you know, for some odd reason, I never watched Breaking Bad. I don't know why. I have no idea why. So I was like, well, I'll go ahead and start it. And there were several Marvel Netflix series I never finished. And I'm like, I'm going to finish those. I Happen Leonard, which is a fantastic show that I remember hearing about. I watched the 3 seasons of it that's on Netflix, and it was great. And I've been and working through some movies too, you know, that I've wanted to see, you know, because I don't know about you, Mike. I'm sure the same. I have several movies that I've wanted to see that people have given me, you know, or they've been like $1.99 at Walmart or whatnot, you know, and you just like, well, hell, for $1.99, or, you know, hey, do you want this? It's a copy of, you know, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Okay, sure, I'll take it. You know, and so there's several on my shelf that I'm like, I need to watch those, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, so I've been delightfully entertained by some great movies.
Yeah. I've been kind of doing that as well, as the kind of search through the treasure trove you already have available to you, but also what everyone just keeps coming out with, I guess at this point, just to keep us entertained or to keep us distracted. Like I'd been meaning to get around to watching Schitt's Creek, you know, for a while, and I'd never found the opportunity to just dive right in. But now, since I'm like, well, after I'm done with my responsibilities for work, I've got nothing else to do really. I can't go out anywhere necessarily, so it's like I might as well get into this now, and I'm all caught up, and I'm like, release that last season onto Netflix finally so I can end it, so I can know how it all turns out.
See, and that's my hesitation, because I have people urging me to check out Better Call Saul. But I'm like, I don't want to go through the 5 seasons and wait a year or however long it's going to be. I would rather wait till that 6th season comes out and then start that, and kind of, you know what I mean? So I won't be waiting forever. You know, so I'm kind of, these last couple of nights, I've been watching like bad movies.
Yes.
movies that are going to be bad.
Oh, yes.
No Holds Barred, starring Hulk Hogan. Terrible, but I watched it. Wrong Side of Town, starring Dave Bautista, Ja Rule. Stormy Daniels has a bit part in it.
I'm guessing I'm guessing her and Dave are the best actors in the whole movie.
Actually, no. Wrestler Rob Van Dam is actually pretty good in it.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, he's good because I think he's just being himself. So he was good. Dave Bautista was okay. Stormy Daniels just basically had like 2 lines and she was topless.
Glorified cameo, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched A Dangerous Man, which is a Steven Seagal movie that was horrifically bad. Just terrible. But sometimes I get in a mood. I want to be entertained by the crappiness that some studios go, yeah, we're going to put this out on DVD or Blu-ray.
Or in this day and age, it's like, forego the theater. They were going to forego the theater anyway because of the pandemic, but no, we were going to forego the theater from the get-go because there's no way we're going to get our money back if we release this in theaters.
Yeah. I'll throw this out there for people listening. Tubi, Tubi, great app. If you have Roku, I don't know. I think it's available probably for Apple TV too. But it's got a great collection of oddball, weird movies. And that's my wheelhouse. I like independent films. I like oddball films. And yes, you have to sit through commercials, but they're not as bad as some other streaming services.
Right.
There are some that they're usually every half hour, and they're usually like 2 30-second ads, and then you're back to the movie. And I've watched a ton. That's where I watched The Raid 2. We talked about it last Sunday. And I rewatched The Raid because it's been forever since I've seen The Raid. So I watched those. Purple Rain, Train to Busan, Harold and Maude, Petey Wheatstraw and Coffee, because one night I wanted to see some blaxploitation films, and I'm like, yes, I've never seen Coffee, and I'd never seen Petey Wheatstraw.
This might have to be a completely separate podcast someday, but Dan and I will have to sit down and ask you what you thought of Petey Wheatstraw in depth, because
oh my god,
if you thought Dolomite could get out there, wait until it's basically Dolomite, but with supernatural elements thrown into the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. His birthing scene, hilarious. People are probably like, what the hell? Right now, Tubi's getting all these people just to download the app just to watch that movie right now. Because, that scene where his mom gives birth is completely bonkers. Not even at all how a baby is born. And I've never seen one be born, but I'm pretty darn certain
sure it's not that way.
It's not that way.
Oh my God. I'm recalling a lot of stuff from it. It's and here's just to show you how much we've matured and grown, is that we can be in awe of that. Back a couple of years back, or when we were younger, if we saw that, we would be like, Scar for life, that's never gonna leave my mind, in terms of how I don't know, gloriously terrifying. We couldn't appreciate this is silly, but man, is it enjoyable. But the most real part of that movie for me, the only part where I'm just oh, that ain't cool, and again, it's just modern sensibilities, is when he's trying to comb that little kid's hair and that little kid is crying his eyes out because his nappy hair is getting just roughed up, and and he drops his lollipop or whatever, and it's a legit moment. That kid is not acting. He is legit traumatized by Rudy Ray Moore coming up and combing his hair against his will. And I'm just when that becomes the most real part of Petey Wheatstraw for me, where I'm just oh wow, that's somber. Where it's glorious demon orgies and things like that left and right. It's just man, I've grown up.
Yeah. And he is just Dolomite. I don't care what your name is. You can call yourself whatever, but you're still just playing Dolomite, dude.
Well, Dolomite is Rudy Ray Moore. It's just the trickle down of Rudy Ray Moore-ishness.
I will tell you, though, since we have talked a little bit about the 80s, there is a movie on Tubi called The FP that is absolutely fantastic. It is a throwback to every 80s cliche that you've ever seen. It's fantastic. And the premise is simple. It's two warring groups are fighting for control of Frazier Park, California. And how do they battle, you may ask? By the only way that civilized people battle, and that is through Dance Dance Revolution.
Yeah, you were telling me about this on Three Geeks. It's just like, man.
Everybody needs to go watch this film. That's all I can say.
Let me put it this way. Are there squads? Do people have squads?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm all for that.
I thought you were going to ask, is there a training montage? And I'm going to say, probably, yes, there is.
I know there's a training montage. I don't need to ask that, but I just need to know if there's squads or if it's solo efforts. Like the lone DDR gunslinger.
No, it's squads.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It's like the Magnificent Seven, but with dancing.
And I'm in a movie only Facebook group, and I posted that I watched this, and somebody, I don't even know who this person is, goes, "Wait, why am I just finding out about a movie that has Dance Dance Revolution in it?" I'm like, "You're welcome, I guess." Is that the?
It amazes me what you can stumble across. So you've gone the route of seeking out some movies where it's you feel like the subject matter or just the overtop nature of them will be entertaining for you or help you kind of focus in on them. I've been seeking out, I don't know why I've been doing this too, because it doesn't help the mood at all. I've been seeking out documentaries.
Yeah, what are you doing, Mike?
I know Tiger King was the big thing once COVID-19 hit. I went through that, and all I took away from that was I just feel bad for the cats.
I never watched it. I don't want to watch it. I think because everybody watched it and told me how great it is, and I'm no.
But it's just and then I don't know why I would do that. I think it's kind of this impulse of well, you've started down this road of trashiness, you might as well continue. Then I watched the Epstein documentary series, and I was just that did nothing to bolster my mood. I believe I was I have to be on Three Geeks this weekend to pick up my mood, because this has depressed me for the whole weekend of just rich people, man. Rich white folks, man.
Yeah.
But I did find one documentary this past weekend that I kind of enjoyed, but at the same time I was all right, that's a little weird. It was Ghost Heads.
What's it about?
Ghostbusters fandom. It was it's one of those documentaries about fandom, clearly directed and written by fans, where they go around to various parts of not just the country but the world and interview people who are diehard Ghostbusters fans, because there are different chapters of Ghostbusters organizations in different states. There's New Jersey has Ghostbusters of New Jersey, and Ontario has the Ghostbusters of Ontario, and they do a pretty decent job of incorporating the fans with the cast, and the cast giving their opinions on fandom overall. Ivan Reitman's in there, Dan Aykroyd is too. Dan Aykroyd, of course, loves the fandom because
he's got an ego. Let's just be honest.
He's got an ego, but also he's really into ghost stuff. So anything that helps perpetuate the legitimacy of the supernatural for him, he'll kind of get on board for. Now, there is sort of a touching interview with Harold Ramis's daughter, and with regards to how the fandom has impacted her life. There's
Bill Murray?
No, yeah. Him and Moranis sat that out. Everyone else, though, on board. Ernie Hudson, of course. Sigourney Weaver shows up for one or two talking head moments.
Okay.
And this was, I guess, being made at the time that the reboot was being shot as well. So you'll have some fans actually going to New York and visiting locations where they're shooting the movie, in the process of shooting the movie. So it's weird though, because they choose to explore how the fandom has affected a lot of these different people. Some of them are really touching stories. One is a girl, how she maintains sobriety for herself is through being able to have a fandom for Ghostbusters. She focuses on building replicas of the proton packs.
Really?
And that channels her energies elsewhere, distracting her from getting drunk or ruining her sobriety, and it is sort of a touching story. But speaking as someone who works in the field of like recovery and mental health and so forth, I'm kind of like, I hope that's not all that is for her. I hope she is like attending AA and some kind of rehab or some when she needs it, that it's not just reliant solely on this one thing in her life, because that can be equally as, I feel, destructive as it could be empowering. So, and they talk a lot about like how Ghostbusters organizations give back to their communities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. But then it decides to focus on just like this one specific fan, and he's from New Jersey. And I don't know what I couldn't put my finger on before. It was just more like he celebrates Ghostbusters, but it also feels as though he's kind of avoiding having to confront some serious stuff in his past or some serious issues through his fandom, and that indulging in it, might not necessarily be the best thing. I don't know.
Huh.
It always interests me with documentaries made by fans too, because it's like, I'm not entirely sure what the thesis statement of these types of documentaries are. Is that, do you want to take an honest look at, what fandom can be for different individuals? Like, I'm a fan of things, but I've never gotten to the point of like, I have to recreate the sewer layer for Ninja Turtles, a life-size replica to make my life complete. Or, like, I like Kevin Smith's stuff, but the most I've ever done for my fandom of Kevin Smith is I went to go see him at a Q&A in Red Bank when he was here, and I got my picture taken with him. It wasn't like, oh, I live my life according to dogma, or I live my life according to Jay and Silent Bob, and dress up like them every day. So I was hoping that the documentary would kind of give me a little bit of more of a look into like what makes up someone who does take their fandom very seriously, to the point where it's kind of like, are you sure this isn't bordering into like an obsessive compulsive type of thing? But
and I was going to ask, and I didn't mean to interrupt you there just a few minutes ago, but do you really think, because I'm of the impression that whenever you make a documentary, there is a little bit of bias in there, because you are picking a subject that clearly you like or you hate, and you can never get a documentary that is like 100% free of bias. Like, I feel that.
Yeah.
You agree?
It's always something that I'm always kind of looking for in the angle, and I think it harkens back to all like the docu-series that I was following, the Epstein thing, Tiger King, is that once you kind of find like the subject or the standout narrative, you can't help but have some kind of bias, because that's what you're going to be focusing in on as a director, as the person structuring this project. The objectivity when it comes to documentaries, I mean, case by case basis, obviously, but sometimes it steers very clear into like, okay, well, it's going to be just pure propaganda now. Yeah. Because honestly, what would have been interesting to me, just because during that year, Ghostbusters was the like for some reason, the most politically divisive thing in our world.
Yes, I remember that. Yep.
Remember back in the days, and we're still in those days, but remember back in the days when people were going to war over female Ghostbusters. What would have been interesting for me in that documentary would to kind of follow up, because the documentary cuts pretty abruptly after the first trailer has been released for the new movie to the fans. They had like a fan screening before they released it online. And so we'd never get like the reactions of the fans after the screening, and I feel like that would have been a kind of a cool narrative, is because your favorite property, this franchise that you're so passionate about, so in love with, is now being represented again for a new generation. And it would be interesting to kind of see like the impression it left with the fans who have been there since the beginning. Like, what are they taking away from it? What are they finding in there that will help them continue to be fans, or not help them continue to be fans? But it stopped suddenly, and part of me was kind of wondering, I can't help but think of the business side of it, being like, was there some kind of buyout deal with Sony where Sony might have some stake in this film in which don't show that, so that way it doesn't feed into, say, some negative feedback perhaps to our product or something like that. And I feel that's where the objectivity is lost a little bit, is that we don't get like sort of responses, good or bad, to what the trailer offered them or what the movie offered them. There's no follow-up with like, what do you feel, how do you feel about Ghostbusters now in the present?
Right.
Whether they still celebrate it or whether it's, it's not for them anymore. Because honestly, there is like one pretty balanced guy who's just like, I'm probably into this. I've been into this fandom for like 6 years. I might do it for a couple more years, but I don't see it being like a lifelong thing for me. And I'm like, this is the most like why don't we follow this guy? He's the most like kind of objective.
He's the most interesting.
Yeah, he's the most interesting. I'm like, yeah, sure, it's cool for people to show off their collections and stuff, but this guy has a very kind of even keel and a very objective way of looking at this franchise. It's like, that might have helped maintain some objectivity in your narrative, but instead it feels really like like, yes, this fandom is something to be celebrated and like all hail Ghostbusters, so to speak. That was kind of what I was getting from it. I'm like, as a love letter to the fans and to the franchise, it works. As a documentary,
no, I see where you're coming from, because likewise I feel like several of Michael Moore's documentaries are that way. Like, I think some of them he did fantastic work on, and without a doubt, I think they're great films. But there are others I'm like, this is clearly slanted. Like, this is more entertainment. This is not information. And so I think that's the slippery slope that documentary filmmakers have to balance when they make something like that.
Yeah, or like even the Heart of Darkness, documentary about Apocalypse Now.
Oh and okay.
The like just the ultimate like hell that movie was to put together, or even like the making of the Shining documentary that Stanley Kubrick's daughter was filming while that movie was being shot, because I feel that's an unapologetic look, because you see a lot of the brilliant stuff Stanley was putting together, but then you see him being an utter monster towards Shelley Duvall, and that is like unfiltered, that is like sugar coated. It's not like, oh, we all got along on set. Like, they show Shelley Duvall in tears because Stanley Kubrick is making her do this run for the 127th time, and it's not like the gleam that you get from like, say, special features on a DVD these days,
right? Yeah.
It's like from Disney or from one of these big companies where it's like, oh, it's an absolute joy to put these projects together. No, this shows you like the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making these films, and it is not apologizing for it. And I'm like, okay, so that's some objectivity there. And from the guy's own daughter, even like saying like, here's my father making his movie, the man and the monster, make of it what you will.
Yeah.
So, I feel like that's kind of a lost art these days. Even with like non-Hollywood or non-pop culture related things, like, say, for example, The Great Hack, or that Fire Festival documentary.
Yes. Okay. I'm familiar with those. I've never watched them, but I'm familiar with them.
Even though it gives you kind of just sort of a recall of the events, so to speak, and you're kind of just, going over the timeline once again of what took place and how it took place, you can still get the sense of they're going in there with the bias of we're going to paint some of these people in a not so flattering light. Now, some of it is attributed to just honestly what the people say, and how what they say can be automatically kind of turned around by paperwork or other evidence that's revealed like, no, that's not what was supposed to be intended. No, that's fine. But when you throw in like very moody music and a certain haunting atmosphere surrounding like surrounding Cambridge Analytica and everything like that, and the whistleblower who professionally and personally, like, her life was made a living hell, because of what she had kind of unearthed, you can't help but feel as though like it's not so much a documentary as it is sort of a cautionary tale now. And maybe that was the intent all along, but I don't know, in terms of just maintaining the objectivity in the lens of a documentary. Like, I could go on and on about this because I love I love documentaries. So
I'm a fan too. Do you have a favorite documentary?
One of my favorites, I'd have to say, it's been a while since I've actually watched it too. So thank you, because I'm gonna have to revisit it now. It's called Comic Book Confidential, and
I don't know if I'm familiar with that.
it's from a filmmaker. He's done a lot of like kind of out there documentaries. He talked about like marijuana, like the depiction of marijuana throughout the decades and its usage in another film. But this one was more about like the twists and turns comic books took throughout 70 plus years of history. It was made in the 80s, but it doesn't just look at like, say, Batman or Marvel. Like they go to the underground set of comics. So he has interviews with like Robert Crumb. He has interviews with Art Spiegelman, who did Mouse, which got a Pulitzer. Yeah. He interviews a bunch of people who, it's like, as you listen to them talk now, you're kind of like, in the modern lens, these people are very, very problematic, to say the least. But it's unapologetically just showing, you know, what their viewpoints were when they created underground comics. It's like, they're just honest. Like, I dropped LSD and I came up with this character and so forth. And there's one guy, the only part of it that seems like it's geared towards painting the subject in a certain light is there's this one guy who made an underground comic about Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse fornicating. And as he's telling the story, he's like playing pool. He's got like the leather vest on and so forth with tassels and stuff. So he's got long hair, a bit of an older guy with a mustache. But then as he's playing pool and he's taking a corner shot, the camera pans ever so slightly to the right, and you see like this girl in a skimpy outfit with like glitzed up 80s hair and stuff, just kind of hanging off a pool cue, like gazing at him. And I'm just like, huh. That's the only time I notice any sort of like this, they set the shot up ahead of time type of thing. It's like, I'm like, I don't feel like this is an actual moment being put to film here. This is just something they kind of planned out. That's the only time in that whole documentary I kind of feel that. But otherwise,
yeah. My two, and I don't know, one is very debatable as to if it's a documentary or not. I think it is. My favorite is Why We Fight, which is a Eugene Jarecki documentary about the paramilitary industrial complex and the creation of it, and it's very good, and I do enjoy it. My other one, and this is the one that's controversial, Marwin Call.
Yes.
Because I think it's a documentary. A lot of people argue the facts. Friends of mine argue the fact. And it's like, no. I'm like, dude, I think it's a documentary. I mean, it's batshit crazy. Let's just be honest. But it's like, I think it's a documentary, man. I really feel like the essence was to capture this dude's story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I mean, for all intents and purposes, there are like dramatizations. Let's put it that way.
True. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I can see it both ways. I still think it's a fascinating story, no matter how you cut it. If it's 100% nonfiction or maybe 95% nonfiction, I still think I think it's stellar.
One of the documentaries that I've had a lasting impact with me as a viewer, but I have no interest really to revisit it, just because the subject matter in and of itself is something that I'm kind of like, that makes me feel a little unsettled having to revisit that. Like, I'm never watching the Epstein docuseries again, of course. But it's called Jesus Camp.
Yes, I've seen Jesus Camp.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And yes. I believe they try to make it as objective and impartial as they can get, if it wasn't for one thing, and that's the score. The score of the documentary is very eerie. It has this very unsettling, ethereal tone to it at certain points, especially when they get into the worship part of things. And you have, like, say, the younger son or the eldest son who's putting together his sermon about, like, pro-life and things like that. And what he's kind of come to realize in his quote-unquote epiphany or come to Jesus moment. And then the music just amps up to this point where it's like they're going to sacrifice somebody This music is telling me that there's going to be a ritual sacrifice. But other than that, other than the score, I feel it does try its best to really maintain like a very detached eye from what they're focusing on.
So you're putting that documentary on the list of movies that made you uncomfortable that we talked about on Three Geeks a while ago?
Yes. It is there because I was
No,
fascinated.
it is.
But
it is
I'm
creepy as all get out.
Yeah, it is very unsettling. But I feel part of it is just because they're unsettling people. I don't know if I have evangelical listeners out there or whatever. I highly doubt it. Sorry, but that particular sect of evangelicals or creationists, they're kind of unsettling. Let's put it that way. I'm being very diplomatic in my word choice here.
I'm still laughing at the fact that you think you have a whole plethora of evangelicals listening to your podcasts and YouTube channels,
Dude, you don't know, man. We were talking about this off the air before, but it's like you don't know. It's like you're just throwing yourself out there for consumption, and
that's right.
Who knows?
Apparently I'm very, very popular in France, according to my Libsyn statistics. So
yeah, every once in a while I'll get into my analytics and I'll be like, where's the biggest concentration of views coming from? And I'll be like, Canada. Okay, cool.
Here's the weird part, and this is totally divergent of what we were just talking about in terms of documentaries, but man, oh man, every time I look at my Libsyn statistics, they love me in the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose area. Number one, every single time I'm number one, I'm like, and then Columbus is number two. And I'm like, come on, C-Bus, let's step up your game here. West Coast is beating us. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's just like, when do you usually release? Well, do you have like a scheduled like release?
Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, not really so much a time. It kind of varies. They're usually in the later afternoon. So between like the 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. is usually when they go up.
Okay.
But yeah, it's on Thursday. It's always on Thursday, but the time varies a little bit. And of course, then it's also reliant on your outlets, because I know like iHeartRadio doesn't release my episode till Monday morning. And I'm like, what the heck, man? I submitted it Thursday. Come on.
Yeah, it takes a while for other platforms to kind of grab it and go.
Yeah.
That's what I was just wondering. It's just like, well, maybe it's because like, when you release it around that time here, everyone's, in traffic, they're on their way back. Maybe they don't have access to their phone to be able to put it on.
Maybe.
But out there, it's lunchtime. So they're going to put on something. So you never know.
Maybe that's it.
So they're
like that young man that likes the San Jose Sharks that lives in Columbus. We're going to make him number one.
Well, I cannot wait for you to report on what your stats are with regards to when Matt Talk really starts to take off.
I think there's a certain target demographic that we're going to go gangbusters with.
Like, I just hope it comes from the most, but I don't know. I'm secretly hoping it comes from the most like unexpected place imaginable, but it'd be like, I don't know.
Like women 37 to 39 in Iowa.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or, outside of the country, like you are really big in Senegal right now. Like, who knew? There's a lot of Matlock fans out in Senegal.
Who knew? I joked with Jason. I go, see, here's what's going to happen. I've put 7 years into the PVDcast, and this Matt Talk that we're just half-ass throwing together is going to be the one that blows up, and we're going to be offered like a 6-figure 2-year deal from iHeartRadio or something. This is what it's going to be. This is going to be the Shits and Giggles podcast. Is going to be the one that blows up and makes us money.
That's the way it usually goes, man. The ones that you're just kind of like, this will be good for a laugh. What? Other people think it'll be great? Well, okay.
Hey, I think Max said, he goes, as long as they keep sending the checks, what difference does it make? I'm like, well, that's true.
Hey, 6 figures. Why stop at 6? Add another 0 on there.
I sometimes I have a buddy that is a lawyer, and he explained about how sometimes clients will bicker, like multimillionaires will bicker about like $1,200. Like, you're a multimillionaire. Why are you bickering about $1,200?
It won't
Like,
be missed.
you're suing another company for $1,200 because they owe you. You have like $18 billion in the bank. Do you need that $1,200?
Especially in this day and age, right now, where it's like, hey, you know what? You could part with a little bit more too. And that can be going towards, I don't know, more resources.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Rich people are weird, I guess.
Weird is one way to describe it. But I feel that as well is its own podcast or its own topic.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
All right. I feel like we've covered quite an array of territory here, man.
We have just gone all over the place.
Honestly, this is kind of what I needed. Just an opportunity to just process other things aside from,
Yeah, exactly.
Batman and putting together remakes.
Yeah, and I'm always down to talk about stupid, silly stuff like movies and 80s TV and whatnot. So.
Oh, well, we might get into some serious territory at some point, I'm sure.
Okay.
I know there was one topic that I said we may get to here, but I'm like, nah, we've got plenty now. Let's save that for another time.
Save that for another time. All right, you got it, man. You got it.
Maybe when things aren't as raw all around the country as they are now, given circumstances. And of course, take care out there. Be safe, whether you're going to get groceries or whether you're out there protesting and wanting to seek out justice. Just make sure you're safe.
Yeah, there you go. Same here. Stay safe, people. Stay healthy. Make sure your friends and family are as well, and we'll eventually get through it, right? We have to.
That's my table, which is wood. Don't worry, didn't jinx it. You've been listening to McChats here on McGTV, youtube.com/MikeMcGTV. Follow me on Twitter at MikeMcGTV. And again, follow John on Twitter at PVDMVP. Got it right this time, not dyslexic. And also at PVDCast.com, as well as anchor.fm/MattTalk, or on Facebook, Matt Talk.
There you go. Well done, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. And I will see you again somewhere on a remake or 3 Geeks or wherever.
Yeah, you got it. See you, everybody.
Bye.